Cinema Worms.
Discussing everything from Grima Wormtongue to the Shy Hallow.
I'm Sabib.
And I'm Lindz.
And this is Cinema Worms Podcast. In the history of the Academy Awards, only 9 women have been nominated for the Best Director Oscar.
Today I'll be talking about The Wedding Banquet, and I am a solo worm for this episode and for a couple of others because Zabib is away on a writing retreat, gambling in the foothills.
Location redacted.
Having all her meals made for her in the sunshine. I'm totally not jealous at all. And why should I be? Because I went to see The Wedding Banquet. Now, this is a remake of Ang Lee's romantic comedy from 1993. It doesn't follow the exact same plot. There are similarities. This version was co-written by Andrew Ann, who also wrote Fire Island, and James Schamus, who is a frequent collaborator with Ang Lee. Now, Schamus has a hell of a filmography. He wrote for films like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. He produced films like Brokeback Mountain, Lost in Translation, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, so he has quite a lot going on. I haven't seen the original 1993 version, so this review is going to stick to the plot of the most recent version that I just saw. And it has quite a packed cast. Starring Kelly Marie Tran, who you may have seen in a couple of the new Star Warses, notably The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. Tran plays Angela Chen, a scientist who works on plastic-eating worms, a storyline that tragically does not play a huge role in the plot, but I dearly wish that it had. She lives with her partner Lee, who is played by Oscar-nominated and Golden Globe winner Lily Gladstone, who you may have seen playing an absolute banger of a role in Killers of the Flower Moon, and was the entire reason pretty much why that film did not seem as long as it was. Lee is undergoing expensive IVF so that she and Angela can have a child, but it's proving more difficult to conceive than they had expected. Enter Min, played by Han Ji-shan, who is best known for his performance in a web drama called Where Your Eyes Linger. Min is a Korean artist whose student visa is about to expire, and he decides that the best way to deal with that is to propose to his boyfriend Chris, played by SNL's Bowen Yang, in one of his snittiest sulks yet. Long story short, Min has been living in borrowed time, and now that time is up. His parents were long dead. His grandmother expects him to return home to take a job in the family business, which is, who knows? She offers him a position as creative director, but creative director of what? Who knows? It's not relevant. Moving on. Min decides to propose to Chris, who turns him down. And then through a series of complicated and increasingly bad decisions, the great idea at the centre of the plot is formed. Min decides that it's a good idea for him to fake marry Angela because A, that solves his family problems, and B, her money problems. He gets a fake wife, she might get a real baby, everybody's happy, right? Wrong. Of course, it goes off the rails almost immediately. His grandmother actually shows up, and they have to try and keep the facade going for as long as possible. I don't want to give you spoilers for the rest of the plot, because everything from that point on I do feel is a spoiler for it. I will say that for a romantic comedy, there was surprisingly little actual comedy in it, and very few good one-liners. I expected more, especially since it features Bowen Yang, who's become one of my favourite SNL stars. The guy is really funny. Please give him some material to work with. It's kind of tonally awkward. It's a bit all over the place. I found it hard to care about the characters. And towards the end, I felt that redemptions were being given rather than earned. There's also something that happens in the original, which they did keep here, that it becomes a major plot point. And though it's done in a different way, it feels like it doesn't work. It made me raise my eyebrows. I'm not sure how that would land with a modern audience. I'm kind of curious to see reviews. I went into this completely blind. And my final thought here is, and this may not be opinion shared by everybody, but quite early on it struck me that there was a major issue with this film. And the issue here is the casting of Lily Gladstone. Unfortunately, Gladstone is so much better at acting than the rest of the cast, at least amongst her peers, that she ends up kind of showing up the rest, even when she's like dialing it down to an absolute whisper. She's just head and shoulders above everybody else. And that's fair because you wouldn't put like Anthony Hopkins in the same room as the cast of like Resident Alien and expect them to go toe to toe. But it did make everything else feel a little more noticeable by comparison. And to finalize this summary, I'd like to shout out to Joan Chen, who plays Angela's mother, and does kind of plays a mother who is kind of stealing the show a lot, but also does manage to steal the show a little bit as an actress. You may know Chen from a particular cult classic because she played Josie Packard on David Lynch's Twin Peaks. Now she's also had a great filmography, and she was most recently, as far as I can tell, in the show Murder at the End of the World, which I also had issues with, but whom I also guessed was the murderer early on, which redeemed it a little bit in my eyes. So if you're interested in these characters, if you're interested to see a queer film that is gently comedic and perhaps tentatively romantic, go and see The Wedding Banquet. Listeners, I am still a lonely worm watching films by myself in the cinema. And today I'll also be talking about Hallow Road, which is a full-length thriller directed by Babak Anvari, who won a BAFTA for his 2016 horror Under the Shadow. He also directed Wounds in 2019, which was adapted from a novella called The Visible Filth by Shirley Jackson award-winning author Nathan Ballingrud. Now, the script for Hallow Road was written by William Gillies, and it stars Rosamund Pike, who you may know from just a huge catalogue, including blockbusters like Gone Girl, Saltburn, the Wheel of Time TV series. She's fantastic. I pretty much went to see this film because she was in it, which I think is a good reason to go and see any film, because Rosamund Pike is in it. It also stars Matthew Rhys, who you may know from, again, quite a long filmography, including The Americans, or he played a journalist who was interviewing Mr. Rogers in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, or his appearance in that unsung classic of 2023, Cocaine Bear. And it also stars Megan McDonnell, who was in a few episodes of Normal People. Now, Hallow Road begins with an absolutely fantastic series of camera shots of an empty kitchen, and this segment just tells a story in and of itself. I absolutely love that. I'll be looking to replicate it in my own work. We get to see the leftovers from dinner. We get to see the wine glass, which is almost gone. It's almost empty. We get to see that the wine bottle is almost empty. We get to see that there is a smashed glass on the floor, that someone has tried to sweep some of it up. There are things which look like they have been left in a hurry, things which look like they have been attempted to be handled and then left. It speaks so loudly without ever saying anything at all. I love the fact there was nobody in this kitchen, and yet we are still being told a story. We also get to see something similar but shorter in the rest of the house, which reveals little details about the couple before we ever actually get to see them in person. So Rosamund Pike and Matthew Rhys are playing Mads and Frank, who have apparently gone to bed, although they do fall asleep in separate places. And then they receive a call from their daughter, Alice, at 2 a.m, confessing that she has just been involved in a car accident. 18-year-old Alice claims that she is not injured, but that she has hit someone with the car, and that the girl she has hit is not breathing. So Mads is a paramedic, and she orders Alice to do CPR until the ambulance arrives. And things really start going downhill from there and never really go uphill again. Mads and Frank immediately rush to the car and drive to Alice's location in a local forest. And as they do so, the relationship between all three of them, which has already been fractured by the events of the earlier dinner, the remnants of which we saw at the start of the film, begin to splinter even further. Now, this is a hard film to talk about without spoilers, and I mean really hard, But about 45 minutes in, there was a point at which my jaw actually dropped. I'm not sure my jaw has ever dropped in my life. Not really. It sort of feels like a cartoon thing, but it genuinely did drop. This could have been kind of a banal film, and at times it does veer into repetition, particularly early on, in a way that I don't feel serves it wholeheartedly. There were a couple of times I remember thinking, oof, the script, like, I wish you would not keep repeating yourself here. I understand why you're doing it, but it does sometimes edge into, this is just, it's a bit much. But on the whole, there is something really nicely done about this thriller, and it does feel like a thriller, despite the fact that most of it takes place in the car as we kind of follow Mads and Frank driving weirdly slowly. I kept seeing the scenery outside the window and thinking, my god, man, you're observing the speed limits pretty well here. This is like when I used to play Grand Theft Auto and I would obey all of the traffic rules and regulations. I would stop at every stop sign. I would always give way. Just really subverting what Grand Theft Auto means. So for Hallow Road, the problems keep stacking up, and Mads and Frank are really struggling with their inability to do anything about or for Alice. It starts to take its toll on them pretty quickly. Alice herself spends most of this film as just a pathetic whimper on the other end of the phone. All we really see is the sort of like profile pic of her looking happy and smiling, but obviously she is deeply upset by what's happened. And so there's a really nice contrast between what we're being shown and what is actually going on. Rosamund Pike is a delight as ever. I enjoyed watching her cool, collected Mads crack under a completely different kind of pressure. There is something different about this film. I didn't necessarily expect it going in because I made sure that I went in pretty blind. I didn't look at any reviews. I can't name the difference for fear of spoilers again, but suffice to say that Alice is not the only person in the forest. And there is a certain, what I would call a Cate Blanchett-esque growl to a character that we meet later. And unfortunately, my suspicions about what were going on were true, but from my notes, when are they not? I'm usually right about this thing. I have actually included a tiny spoiler in this review, but you won't know what it is until you go and see the film. And then you realize what I have said at the start of this podcast. I think this is going to be a film that really divides people. I am dying to hear what Zabib, who is still gallivanting around, eating her weight in capers and pasta. I'm not jealous at all. I remain not jealous, despite the fact that it's cool and not at all capery here. I'm really curious who is going to see this film and what people are going to make of it. I feel like now that I've come home and I have looked up reviews, they seem quite divided. So I'm very curious. If you have seen Hallow Road, drop a comment below. Let me know what you thought of it.